Today we will look at the subject of influences, which is something that Baba had brought up in the most recent Avyakta Murli. And in today's Murli, it was also there in the sentence where Baba had said that good company will carry you across, carry the boat of your life across to the other shore, and bad company will sink you. So influence and company is the same thing. First of all, it's very important to understand that it is the nature of a soul to be influenced. The soul is always influenced. In Hinduism, there is a belief which is called nirlep, and that means that the soul is not affected by any influence. And one of the points of knowledge is that the soul is lepchep, which means under influence. And so Baba has provided us with powers, the power of discrimination and judgment is very important in this, because the soul has the ability to minimize the influence and to decide what influence to be open to and what influence to be closed to. But if the soul doesn't understand that there is an influence, or doesn't understand that a particular influence is influencing, then the soul will be carried by that influence, and the influence will provoke the soul into performing an action which the soul will say, well, it wasn't my fault, or I couldn't help it, something like that. So I would like to talk about some of the influences, especially the invisible influences that are there. And one analogy is pollution. There are certain kinds of pollutions like carbon monoxide which are completely invisible, but it affects your health very considerably. There are certain instruments that can detect it, but your eyes cannot. And so we use technology to help us to detect things and protect ourselves physically from physically harmful influences like pollution. So on the spiritual level, there are influences that are completely visible, tangible to the discerning soul. And there are many, many influences that are completely invisible. And so I think that we must try to increase our ability to detect intangible, invisible influences so that we establish some sort of barrier between ourselves and it. And there have been occasions on which Baba has described a level of yoga as a sphere or an orb of spiritual light, and you just walk around in that orb, and then it creates a boundary where you remain in the influence of your spiritual vibrations, and then things that are on the outside of that orb do not penetrate it, and consequently they do not influence you. Have you heard about that yukti? Yes? If not, we have now. So, so this is a nice thing to do as you walk around. With your mind, envision an orb of light with a kind of skin on it, so that you're in this light, and there's a skin, an invisible skin, at whatever distance you like, maybe 3 or 4 feet around you, however you want to be, and go around in that. And you will find it's a very nice experience. Why do we come to Madhuban? Many things, but one of the things is the influence. It's very, very powerful vibrations here. And so you put yourself in the midst of this atmosphere of spiritual power is definitely influencing us. Even you may find in some environments it's difficult to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but in this environment it's very difficult not to, because everyone is waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and there's an influence of that. And so you just open your eyes and feel like being awake and feel like going to one of the meditation rooms and sitting down there for an hour or so. Whereas if you're in another influence where everybody's very heavily sleeping and snoring and they never get up until way past sunrise, you will experience that it isn't as easy, because there's another influence, the influence of heavy sleep, which you then resist. So you, with your own practice, are anyway establishing an influence for your own self, because a practice, which is something that is done every day, creates a momentum, and this momentum is itself an influence. Because a human being, by definition, does things by repetition, by routine. I see. And so we have you can say, the most tangible level of Srimat. And you must have noticed in today's Murli that Srimat was defined as this, that if you follow it, then you will reach your destination, you will pass the exams. And so the most tangible form of Srimat are the you can say the rules, the recommendations, the routine, the practice that we do, which starts with get up in time to be sitting in the meditation room of your choice by 4 o'clock in the morning, so that you are awake, alert, relaxed, and able to establish yourself in very rewarding communication and contact with Shiv Baba. That's the first Srimat, isn't it? I see. And then we have other Srimats, like, for example, come to morning class. If there's no morning class around, create one for yourself. I remember when we first used to go out into the middle of nowhere to establish centers long ago, there wasn't any students. So we would sit, we had the gadi and everything, tape recorder, the whole bit, and we would teach them early to the walls. But the students started to come after some time. But it is an influence. If you set up the arrangements for that kind of spiritual education circumstances, environment, it's a form of invocation, you see. And it creates a very strong sense of the routine, of the atmosphere, of the filling the atmosphere with the period of meditation, followed by a period of out loud, even if there's nobody there, out loud, reading the Murli to the walls. You're listening at least. You can be the one speaking and also the one listening. Like Brahma Baba, he's listening to the knowledge and it's coming out of his mouth, both. Why not us? We have to follow the Father. So there's also an influence. And we have another Srimat, which is the offering of Borg. Actually, sometimes people, they wonder, why are we doing this? And Shiv Baba's not eating anyway, so why do we do this? Well, it creates a very, very powerful influence. And those people who have subtle vision. They can see when you formally have the Borg table, make the food in Baba's remembrance, put everything in the right way with a cloth underneath and the little boxes with their little lids and a nice tray which is not used for anything else and a nice cloth over the top and all of which is clean and on a clean table, and you put your meditation song, you put your incense and you put your Shiv Baba's light and whatever, and then you offer. It creates a very, very strong atmosphere. And that atmosphere covers over your whole place where you live, your house, your apartment, your room, whatever it may be. But the practice, the routine, daily practice of offering Borg causes an atmosphere, like one of these spheres or orbs that I was telling you about. You put one of those over your whole place where you live. So, of course, in a center it's absolutely essential, because the center must have the purest, most powerful vibrations. Otherwise it's not able to do the best quality of service. But anyone who is a Brahmin and who creates this atmosphere in their home, they are creating the same atmosphere like a center, and it invokes the presence of Bap Dada. It invokes any soul who is looking for that connection, and it keeps you in the best possible environment. And that is going to assist you in your meditation practice and in having a very good quality life on a day-to-day basis. And these are all invisible and very subtle things, but yet when you are sensitive, they're very, very tangible, you see. So if you go into a place where these things are not going on, you will feel, oh, this is lokic, this is worldly. And if you go into a place, even if no one tells you, and yeah, Borg is being offered, Amrit Vela is going on, the Murli is being studied, you will feel, this is an alokik place, because it's in the atmosphere. And Brahmins are sensitive to these things. So when there is the maximum amount of and different elements of these spiritual practices going on, you feel comfortable, and it helps you to rise in your own inner state. It gives you an extra dimension of spirituality above and beyond the effort that you're making at that particular time, you see. So these are very helpful. This is why we do it. They're not rules that you have to do, otherwise who knows what will happen to you. But they're recommended that if you want to move ahead with the maximum ease, do this, because it'll help you. It goes with you. So we say, yes, why not? We are easy Raj Yogis. We take the easy path. But of course, there are going to be many influences which are against you. And so we need to be able to understand their value, discern them, and decide what is going to be our policy for the things that come to oppose us. And it was interesting, in a very recent Avyakt Murli, Baba had said, and he had given the example of Brahma Baba's life history, that Brahma Baba had to face a great deal of opposition. And it is this very opposition that puts a person into position, you see. So that means that whenever you encounter opposition, it is advantageous to consider it as instrumental to put you into your right position. Because what happens to the people who function to give you opposition? They just do their part and go on their merry way. But what happens to you is you become fixed in your position of being strong, stable in who you are and what you want to do. And so, in fact, they have been helpful. Not to themselves particularly. They might have done something quite nasty, so they built up some negative karma. But you didn't suffer, you got promoted. So what's wrong with that? It just depends very much on how you take it. And it also means that we have to, at every step, discern what power we should use in the face of this thing which is coming to oppose us. If we take something at face value, and if we say Haji to anything and everything, then we become under the influence of anything and everything. So what are the ways in which we can fortify ourselves and make ourselves more discerning regarding influences which are capable of delaying us, hindering us, damaging us in our spiritual practice and personal progress? There are many different ways to go, and every single one of us does our own private churning of the ocean of knowledge. But I think that it's quite good to go to the basic position, a position that I very often put myself in, especially when there's any kind of tricky situation. I'll always put myself suspended between God and death. You know how stars are suspended in the sky and nothing holding them up. So you can put yourself, God on the one side, death on the other side. Why is this useful? The negative influence on a soul is basically matter. And then the positive influence on a soul is ultimately God. And death is the final illusion of matter or materialism. We are in bodies, and Baba had said, every day is your last day. You never know when it will be. Live every day, as Mama used to do, as if it's your last day, which means that matter is about to relinquish its hold on you. But its hold on you is very strong. Its influence is very strong. How does matter influence us? Well, first of all, we are very affected by our sense perceptions. We're affected by the temperature. It's too hot or it's too cold. Here in Mount Abu, it's either too hot or too cold. It's very rarely just right. And then too, only for a day or two. But the elements of matter, one way or the other, are imposing themselves on you. They will trouble you. And if the weather or the environment has an extra dimension of pollution, then you have to resist that too, because it's going to affect your body, and your soul is going to be affected by the things that affect your body. And you will feel allergies or whatever, and it will make you feel reduced in your ability and comfort for making your spiritual efforts, because you want to be able to be bodiless. And if the body is bothering you, then it's more difficult to be bodiless. So this is one influence that is there. And for yogis, it is said that essentially it shouldn't make much difference. It's too hot, it's too cold, it's too wet, it's too dry, all of these things. We need to develop an ability to be relatively immune to those things. You see? And the more we are practiced to be detached from the effects of the body, then the easier it is to be immune, because they're there. It's one of our tests, you know. Then there is just straight illness, various pains. As you get older, you may well get wiser, but you also get more pain. It's like that. A few people don't, but the majority get aches and pains of one sort or another. It's age, you know, teeth fall out, you need a stick, you know, you go deaf. All of these things are there. And even Baba had mentioned this in a Murli about how his children are now, you know, with sticks and glasses and hearing aids and all of this stuff. And when our body is losing its youthful vitality, then also it's an influence. And we say, oh, I can't run up the mountain and sit on Baba's rock like I used to do. Or I can't, you know, travel with the ease that I used to do. Or I can't you know, carry on as long as I used to. Or I need this and I need that, which I didn't used to need, you see. So these are influences. And when that is there, you can't alter the aging process, but you have to work with it. Understand yourself and how to move along in such a way that these realities are having the least amount of impact on you. And for that, we have to have an extremely positive outlook, because our thought makes a great deal of difference, you know. If we are very body conscious, we will get very upset when we start getting wrinkles and grey hairs and all of that, because then we're not beautiful anymore. But so what, you know, because we're a soul. And the soul is what we're working with. And when the soul is content, then the sign of that will show on the aging process, that you age gracefully and not with the resistance and reaction and all of that, you see. I talk about age because, you know, some of us have been around with Baba a long time. We're growing old together. And this is very nice. You can see somebody like Dadi Janki, Dadi Prakash Mani. In 30 years, I think there's very little aging. And it was always said of Brahma Baba that from the time of his age of 60, when he started to be Baba's instrument, it was as if the aging process almost ceased. Yeah, they say this, that he didn't age. So this is a sign of good spirituality, that though you age, but it's not impinging upon your being, you know, and that is a way or an aspect of being free from that influence. We get very influenced by what we see and what we hear. And this is one of the reasons why it is said in quite a few Murlis that films are bad for BKs. You know, and some people say, well, we only watch good films. But in the sense that when you're watching a film, that every element of the film imposes itself on your consciousness strongly, because the sound is big, the words, the music, the sound effects, they're all there, quite strongly going in your ears. And the pictures are very big, and so they impose themselves on the screen of your mind. And the things that they want you to feel by showing various things in front of you, you know, you feel them. Some sad thing is going on, you'll cry. Some violent scene is going on, your heart will start palpitating. You'll find there's very few people who can sit in a movie and be completely deadpan. And if they are, then why are they bothering to go anyway in the first place, you know? So they go because they want to have this a very extra stimulation of the senses. And I did some experiments on this in a sort of fortuitous way. I remember when I was living in Los Angeles, many visitors would come and they all wanted to go to Disneyland. So there was one year when I went to Disneyland 19 times. After that I said, that's it, no more, I don't want any more Mickey Mouse. But during that time, Disneyland, sometimes is very, very crowded on that kind of day, and sometimes, like in November, when it's cold and windy and rainy, there's hardly anybody there. So once I went at that time, and normally you have to queue for a long time for all the rides, but on that particular occasion, we could go just, immediately from ride to ride to ride. And I observed during that day, because you can't spend less than a day, you arrive in the morning, 10 o'clock or so, and you spend the whole day. And you go through these rides where there is enormous sensory stimulation. You may go on a roller coaster, which will make you scared to death on a number of occasions. And there's enormous, a 360-degree films where you go through mountains and rivers and whatever they want to show you. And it's very, very strong sensory stimulation. So I observed at the end of that day that it was a good thing if one had to queue between rides, because you could recover. They have some rides where you sit on a kind of amazing movable chair and they send you through volcanoes and outer space and earthquakes, and really it's exactly the same thing. So whatever happens to your body in terms of racing heart and all of the things, lots of adrenaline happens to you. It's very exhausting. And so when these sorts of things are happening to a person, it's a very, very strong influence. It drains your physical energy, but also it very much drains your spiritual energy. Here, staying in Mount Abu, that I have been doing for the last more than 3 years, there are many times when it is totally quiet for days on end, and I'm not necessarily involved in all of the activities. And so I observe what happens to me when there is almost no stimulation at all. There is always the routine, but when there's times when I will not speak for the whole day because there's nobody I have to talk to. There's nobody who has to talk to me. I will get on with my job. But very, very quiet. And because my work is spiritual work, very internalized. Basically, it's just you spend your whole life churning the knowledge and putting it out in the form of images and words. But I find that, and also having 3-4 hours meditation a day on a regular basis is very nice. You go deep and very deep inside, you build a very good, strong, silent stage, and you like that. There isn't a feeling to go out particularly. You go into Mount Abu for one reason or another, and it's like, what is this? It's kind of an assault on your silence. So we are influenced, or we create something which influences us. So I think that in this subject of influence, one thing is, it's just very important for us to be able to identify that in our lives on a day-to-day basis, what are the things that are impacting us? And to what extent do we have choice? we need to distinguish where we have choice and where we don't have choice. There are many things that we don't have choice about, and for that, well, we say, I'll face it, I'll tolerate it, I'll accommodate it. Basically, those powers are useful for things that you can't do anything about. You know? And then there are some things that we can do something about. There may be people who say, oh, come and do this, your spiritual life is a bit too boring, you're going to get disconnected from the world, it's not good for you, and they start talking to you like this, and they're saying, you come, picnics, swimming, sport, football, this, that. And so you have to decide how far you want to maintain your sociability, how far you decide, this is good to have this percentage, and how far you want to keep yourself to yourself. I think it's really very personal, but I think also that each one has to work that out for themselves. Everyone is different. And some people, they like a lot of quiet time, a lot of alone time. They're very internalized types anyway. And so then they will say, well, it's not interesting, it's not necessary, I'll pass, And then there are others, and they will say, yes, no, it's good, I can be in a lot of company, I can share the fragrance of my virtues and qualities with all these people, this is a good opportunity for service, and when both of these are true, then you have to go inside yourself and see, today, do I want to be in or do I want to be out? What does Baba want me to do? And you can check internally with Baba that is this a outgoing service day? Is this an internal quiet day? Sometimes everyone around you will say, no, we got to go out, we got to go play. But then you check with Baba, and Baba will let you realize that, you know what, child, your yoga's a little down, and if you go out, it's going to get more down. Might be better if you just stay cool and give yourself time to maintain your yoga. Don't get too exhausted, because then you're going to have to recuperate from it, and is it worth it? Huh? So you have to see your situation, because every single thing is an influence. There's influences that feed us in a positive way, and there's influences that consume us and that draw energy from us. And so we need to be sensitive to this. Sometimes you may be in a situation where there is a lot of anger around. Have you experienced that? Angry people around? Or they may not think they're angry, but you think they're angry. And you feel that they're oppressive, you see. So then, whether or not they agree with it is a separate story. You may not want to discuss it, but with your own self, you see, to what extent am I afraid of this atmosphere of anger, violence, oppression, suppression, whatever? Because in Kali Yuga there's a lot of that around. And you have to see, am I afraid of it? Being afraid of it means that it is affecting you and it is making you move in the way that it wants you to move. Because one of the things that is very strong in human society is coercion. You know what I mean by coercion? It means you are being pushed to do something that you don't want to do. That's coercion. And if you're not able to resist it, then you find yourself doing that against your will. So this sometimes comes up in a Brahmin's mind, that how am I supposed to handle this thing? Because if I argue with this person, or if I make a big fuss, then maybe that's not spiritual. You know? That question arises. But the society of much of the world is fear-based. Many of the religions teach morality through fear. They say you have to be good, otherwise we'll hit you. So that's pretty easy, clear. And interestingly, this thing of beating people is a strong influence to make people disconnect from their spiritual essence, even though it's done with the intention of making them more spiritual or more good or more pure. It never actually works. And yet it's very, very prevalent. So what to do about coercion and violence? Because it's an influence. Not long ago, there was a group of people who were studying to be teachers, and they came here for a retreat. There was about 100 of them. So they were college students studying for a qualification in education, and they were going to be teaching children from age 4 to 14, that kind of age. And so I asked them about how they're making themselves ready to become teachers, not in terms of imparting information, but in terms of interacting with the children. Because when you're with young people like this, then you're a kind of surrogate parent, because they need your love, they need your attention, and they need direction. And so I said to them, well, if you have made a mistake, will you admit it? And every single one of them said, no, we won't admit it. So I said, well, why not? Well, we are afraid of punishment. I see. So this is the influence, the social influence that is exercised on young people normally, most of the world. And the young people are taught by the stick and a little bit of carrot. We have Toli, we have Dharmaraj. But we should not be fear-based. If we get Toli, it's not that if we do good then we get Toli. No, you come to class, you get Toli after every morning class. And whether you sat in the murli attentively or you fell asleep, you still get Toli. Isn't it? Huh? Or even if you're having some amazing storm of Maya, but you still sat there, you'll get Toli. If you didn't come, you won't get. Or you could come at the end and take, but still you'll get. But you see, we have Toli because it's a sign that the atmosphere is essentially loving and positive. It's not used as a reward. It's used as a sign of love. I see. Oh, you want 2 Tolis? Okay, you can have 2 Tolis. You know? No one will say, no, you can't have 2 Tolis. You can only have 1. You're only allowed 1. No, we share. If there's not enough, you want 2 and somebody has none, we'll say, well, no, it's nice if you don't have 2 Tolis because they won't have 1. But usually there's no problem. Dharmaraj, you know, how do we relate to Dharmaraj? Are we afraid of some punishment happening to us, and because of that we are going to do the right thing? Or what is our relationship with Dharmaraj? Dharmaraj can be translated in a variety of ways. And sometimes it's translated as the supreme justice, which has the implication of punishment. And so people who are fear-based will generally think of Dharmaraj as some kind of punishing fellow, some embodiment of punishment. But Dharmaraj also means the king of righteousness or the rule of righteousness. And then we go a little deeper into this word dharma, because in Hinduism, dharma is used a lot. In Indian culture, it's used a lot. What is your dharma? It means how do you operate as a human being? Not just what is your religion. It's got more elements to it. But in Gyan, we have the term dharna, which we translate as being inculcation of virtue. But it also has many other aspects to it. I think that real soul consciousness is expressed partially by being true to yourself. So if you do the right thing, whatever that is, in a way that it is following your conscience, because every person has a natural sense of justice, and you know what is right. Sometimes you know what is right, but some external element wants you to do what is right, not on the basis of what you know, but on the basis of fear. You see? So if there is that influence that wants you to do right on the basis of fear, are you going to take it in, or are you going to do something different with it? Because as we know, in the Golden Age, there's no law enforcement. There's no law enforcement. Everyone does what they do because it's natural to do it. And so we call it neutral karma. So in the confluence age, we must also develop that ability and that trust in our own conscience. And we're hearing the Murli every day, in which Baba's very often saying what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what's useful, what's useless. You know? So we have a lot of information. But in the end, I, the soul, am responsible for what I think, what I say, what I do, how I do it, how long I do it, with what intention I do it. All of these things, it comes down to the self, you see. So good quality spiritual practice involves developing and cultivating this inner part which knows the difference between right and wrong, which doesn't have anything to do with whether you get punished or rewarded. You see? So I think, to me, punishment and reward is for donkeys and dogs and cats or whatever. But to put it for human beings is very primitive. And we are not primitive. We are developing ourselves very highly as being masters of the world. And so I think it's very important to shift ourselves away from doing something so-called right out of fear. We should do something right because it's a good idea. And we should not do something wrong because it's plainly not productive. You see? If we do things out of fear, then it means that we're taking the vice of fear and putting it into the category of virtues. And then it creates mix-up in our conscience and a mix-up in our intellect. And then we are not able to think straight. Because on one minute, fear is a vice, and the next minute is a virtue. You can't operate like that. It creates double standards. And if you operate by double standards, you cannot have good quality morality. So you have to see for yourself, to what extent am I fear-based? And then look deeply inside yourself. And if there is some external influence that wants to make you do something out of fear, don't. You know? Because it will eat away at the cultivation of your personal courage, your personal honor, and your personal ability to be, the self-sovereign. You see, a self-sovereign cannot be fear-based. So this is a very subtle kind of effort to make oneself not a fear-based person, whilst in a world which thinks that to be fear-based is a good idea. You know? And where does this come from? It comes from the effects of a belief in progress, of a belief in evolution. Many of you may have been raised in a Christian culture, and you know that in that religious environment, cultural religious environment, the human being is thought of as being essentially sinful, fallen. And then you have to, through Christ, or however, you have to rise. And so it is based on the idea that you start off not good, and that you will become good. Materialism is like that too. It says that you start off basically raw, uncultured, primitive, and you will develop and become whatever it is, civilized, developed, all of those things. And this concept is the reason why it is believed that you can make people better by applying violence on them. And I was reading something interesting from the Philippines, in which the whole thing of raising children and students, the whole teaching environment of students in the Philippines. Is there anybody from the Philippines here? No, anyway. They will find people, older people, to give testimonials, to say, yes, because I was beaten by my teacher, so I learned well. So therefore we're going to beat you, because then you will learn well. And I know because it happened to me, so we're going to beat you double, Except that if you investigate more, you will find that those who are trained by oppression, by beating, by making them afraid, can't learn. They cannot learn. They can repeat. They cannot learn. They cannot develop. Cannot develop as self-responsible human beings, you see. And so a very, very important thing, a way in which to use the Gyan is, Baba says very clearly, that if you do such and such, you will suffer. Not because Baba will come along with a big stick and make you suffer, but that certain action produces certain consequence, and it's neutral, it's not a threat. It's just a simple piece of information. Like if you eat rotten food, you're going to get a bad attack of the stomach problem. So be careful. Right? Nowadays, we have bird flu. Have you heard about bird flu? It's all over the place in Asia. And so nobody's eating any chicken, nobody's eating any eggs. all becoming naturally vegetarian. And then, of course, he had mad cows, so not eating cows. And so, so these illnesses are not really a problem for BKs because you don't eat that stuff anyway. And the people who get those illnesses get it by eating these animals. You see. So it's very practical. It's not a threat that, oh, if you're not vegetarian, something ghastly is going to happen to you because we're going to make that happen to you. No. Be vegetarian because it's clean. Take care of yourself, love yourself, respect yourself, be good to yourself. You know. Not remember Baba because otherwise some ghastly thing is going to happen to you, but no. Remember Baba because you'll be happy. Remember Baba, you're filling yourself up with spiritual power, and so whatever you do is going to be supported by that remembrance, so it'll be good. You know what to do. You know. And so, in that way, using the knowledge in a very systematic way, with that understanding that Baba again and again says, you know, I am God and you are my children, and you started off as gods and goddesses, and then you declined mostly because of the passage of time. Can't feel guilty about that, can you? It's just the passage of time. You go through the golden age, and then after a time it becomes the silver age. You didn't do anything. Nobody does anything wrong in the golden age, right? It becomes the silver age because of time. And then you go through the silver age, and after some time it becomes the copper age. Then you fall, plunk, into body consciousness. Nobody's fault. It's just the half-life of the self-realized soul was finished, and it became its opposite. And so you come under the influence of matter. Come under the influence of matter, the vices come. It's not wrong, it just is. Vices come. So religions come as a way to handle the vices. It doesn't work. Because you don't know the soul, you don't know the Supreme Soul. So you make effort, you do your best, but after the copper age comes the iron age. Doesn't go the other way. So you have the effect of vices, the effect of time, the effect of ineffective resistance, and you end up back in Madhuban. You know? So all of us arrive here more or less depleted, with acquired guilt feelings. Acquired. Because this system of making people feel bad about themselves just because they exist is an influence that makes you guilt-based, fear-based, and this actually creates an obstacle in your spiritual practice. This is why I'm talking about it. That it's actually another negative influence. But it was done in the name of carrying you forward. Just like in today's Murli, Daddy Manor was mentioning. Everybody happily says, oh, God is omnipresent, thinking they're saying something really nice. And then Baba comes along and says, hey guys, you're insulting me, please stop. I am not omnipresent. What are you talking about? You can't even think straight if you think that. And he's right. Can't think straight. Everything got all mixed up and messed up because of having taken in stuff they shouldn't be taken in. We allowed an influence to come in that did negative work. And now, with soul consciousness, with self-awareness, you look inside and you see where these acquired negative things are that are nothing to do with you being negative, and just pluck them out and put them away. Which you can do with your mind, you see. You observe the thing with detachment. Soul consciousness means I am a pure and peaceful and valuable and beautiful and excellent and wonderful and marvelous soul. And plus some junk went in. To take it out. Doesn't mean you're bad. It means junk went in, so take it out. And Baba gives the analogy of gold, where the goldsmith will heat up the gold, and it's only when it's very hot that the junk will come out, whatever is alloy. It won't come out unless it's melted. And so Baba says, that negativity went in without you allowing it, but it went in anyway because you didn't know enough and it wasn't time and all those things. But now, with yoga, neutrally, with yoga, you heat yourself up to melting point and out comes those things, vices and whatnot. And then Baba adds a little bit more information and says that if something surges up within you, which is extremely horrible and bad, don't feel guilty, don't feel surprised, don't feel bad. Just be a detached observer and let the thing go, because it's part of the melting process and part of the thing coming out. So don't be naive, and definitely don't be afraid of it. Be neutral, Whatever the emotions you may be feeling, you may be having a big lust storm, say, oh, I'm a terrible person because I'm having a lust storm. No, you're doing your meditation and whatever lust went in has to come out. And then you let it come out and let it go. You become more pure. Or you have a big anger storm, you want to kill everybody, but it's not very good. So you have to do something with it. So you have to make yourself very neutral and let the thing come out. You see, like a boil erupts and all the pus comes out. If you're the patient, you'll think it's awful, but if you're the doctor, you say, "Oh no, this is how it goes," So don't worry about it. Let it come out. Maybe you have a carbuncle. Have you ever had a carbuncle? It's a huge boil, nasty thing. But all the toxin that's inside you comes out. So that's all it is. It's just a toxin coming out. Doesn't mean you are bad. You see. And in the same way, if somebody comes along and tries to tell you you are bad, don't buy it. Who are they to tell you you are bad when God Himself is saying you are good? Right? He says, I'm God, you are my creation, you are souls, pure, beautiful, peaceful, excellent beings, and plus Ravan stuck in some poison, so now it has to come out, that's all. So no need for any of this threats and whatnot. But it's the prevailing atmosphere. And so it's quite useful to know that it is a test. It's very important to be able to discern, not to allow coercion to happen. Because we BKs, we are volunteers. We volunteer to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day. It's a volunteer. Nobody has to. You get up if you jolly well want to. And if somebody doesn't want to get up, and you make them get up, it's not going to be very useful, But if you get up because you want to get up, you meditate because you like meditating, you do all the things, whatever we do, because you benefit from it. And time is very precious. Or you can go get a hold of it and read it. You could do that. It's not the end of the world. Even if it is the end of the world, you can still do it. But that feeling that I've done something wrong. You haven't. For whatever reason, okay, you were too lazy, so you missed the murli. So then you say, oh, I was too lazy, so I can tighten it up, or I can just, oh, I'm so lazy I can't do anything. No, you have choice. Many things are there. And the process of making ourselves completely free, which we call Jivan Mukti, freedom in life. You cannot be free if you're under this thing that wants to make you afraid. You see, you're free to do service. As maybe someone tell you you have to do service, don't consider it as an order, consider it as an encouragement. And at every step you have choice. You can do. We like to please others. One of the speakers in the conference that was recently held here in Shantivan mentioned that he liked the way the Brahmakumari institution was operating, because the people do their duty wanting their instrument person, their senior person, to give them the reward of saying, yeah, you did a good job, it's good, or they smile. If you do something, okay, you're doing it for Baba, but also if that person who is instrument for giving you that task or assignment, and you do that thing and they're pleased, you like that because it's a validation or a verification that Baba is also pleased, That's also an influence. But at the same time, sometimes you do really very nice job, but they're too busy with something else and they don't give you that. And or you get a toli without drishti. Have you ever had that happen? Toli without drishti? Some people, they won't go. They'll say, drishti please. I don't need the toli, I need the drishti. But it's also a test. That can you be so confident that BK who is giving you toli without drishti loves you? With or without drishti? You see? So that we don't become dependent on that little touch of appreciation, a little touch of recognition. We have to be able to, go through the motions and everything and have no recognition, no reward, no nothing. Or even sometimes the opposite. You will be marginalized slightly, put on one side. No, yeah, because why? You have to be confident in yourself, that you know who you are and that you know you did good between you and Shi Baba. You were an accurate trustee, and that's enough. You don't need somebody to tell you. You see, when you need somebody to tell you, that's called being a child. And we are sweet children and all that, but we are adult children, so we need to be able to do things without, am I okay? Please smile at me, tell me you love me. That's a very insecure person, you see. A secure person knows, toli or no toli, drishti or no drishti, smile or no smile, I'm right with myself, I'm right with this person, I don't need a signal every time. That's a good confidence, you see. And that's also an aspect of a self-sovereign. Because otherwise, if somebody is flattering us, we do what they want. And if somebody is being hard with us, we avoid them. And that's very, very much under the influence. We need to be under the influence of God, Shrimat, our conscience, our confidence in ourselves as a free and independent soul, human being, who knows the difference between right and wrong, and who doesn't need anybody to be an external moral authority, because the inner moral authority is alive and well. If you have this, then you fulfill the requirements of moral leadership. And as you remember, Baba had said, you are the ancestor souls. You remember that? And again, I will make a comparison between the civilizations that are materialist, which are based on the assumption that there is progress. They believe that the ancestors were apes, and so you are very highly evolved in comparison with them, and so you don't need to worry about what they thought or what they did or how they operated, because you are much more civilized than that. So there is not much interest in ancestors if they're apes, you know. Whereas the Gyan and a philosophy that speaks of time being a process of devolution, then the ancestors are important. And in the land of India, a lot of importance is given to ancestors. In China also, a lot of importance. Because on that assumption of devolution, it means that the ancestors were more highly evolved than the descendants. And therefore they care for the descendants in the sense of the heritage of their life story and what they did and how they did and so on and so forth is the treasure that the descendants have to use, you see. So for example, with Brahma Baba, very often we are told, follow father, or whatever Brahma Baba did, do that, because we are descendants of Brahma, very immediate ones, you see. And then Baba has said, you yourself are the ancestors, connected with all the leaves, and whatever it is that you do, and however it is that you operate as a human being, it's going to provide those leaves with their spiritual nourishment. That means their influence. So all the leaves on the tree are pretty much influenced by the idea that the ancestors are apes. And so they have this wonderful ego issue that I am highly civilized. But if you look back in Western philosophy, and you go back about a couple of thousand years, you will find that the philosophers, the moral philosophers of that time were talking pretty much the same like we're talking here, you know. Be good, do good, don't be nasty, don't take sorrow, don't give sorrow, all that. It's been going on. But people have been getting less morally developed. So the belief is the opposite of the practical reality, but it's not seen because the belief is a preconception, it's so strong. Now Baba has told us, your ancestors were not apes. The descendants have become worse than apes. Sometimes he says that. Have you seen any Murlis like that? Yes. Because all the vices and the image of monkeys is used in this. You know, the little image of the monkeys which represent the see no evil, talk no evil, hear no evil, think no evil. Huh? But these Mount Abu baboons are really quite civilized in comparison with some monkeys, which are very strong in all the vices and very out there about it. They're very aggressive, lustful, greedy, attached, all the things, and it's right there in front of you. So they're very good analogies for what happens when you come under the influence of the vices. So to be an ancestor means first and foremost to reduce the influence of matter and to increase the influence of God. Because Baba is the origin of knowledge, the giver, the ocean of knowledge, in which he tells us the philosophy of karma, that what is correct, what is incorrect, why, how, all of the various things. So he gives us all the information we need. And then he says, okay, now go and do whatever you want. We are free. But he gives us many recommendations. He has said, for the Brahman world, we may not take the law into our own hands. We may not correct anyone. I've been in Gyan 30 years, and that instruction that you do not correct anyone came somewhere during that time. Previously, there used to be millions of corrections. And then Baba said, no more corrections. Do not say, this is wrong, that's wrong, the other is wrong, blah, blah, blah. But just the model, this is good, and then however you want to work with it, do it. So he has said that you become the example. Whatever you do, others will watch you, and they will do likewise, even in small things, And so you see, say for example, you're living with someone. You will observe that person, whatever it is, their systems that are good. You will say, hey, that's good, I will also do that. And whatever they do that are not good, we say, I won't look at that. I won't copy it. I won't correct them. I just give them the freedom to do whatever they want to do, to be whatever they want to be. But be the swan, the discerning one. See the qualities of a person and take benefit from that. And whatever you understand to be under another influence, under the influence of one or another of the vices, don't look at it. Because if you criticize a person for it, they will feel distant from you. They will not change. They will not quit doing that. If you give a person a hard time for the thing that they're doing, that will increase their feeling of fear of you. And it will make them want to keep you away, you see. And it will create a distance in the relationship, you see. So then it's not an atmosphere of harmony and love. It creates tension. So I find it's very good to, everybody has their good and their bad, and then they have a right to play their part. Their part is destined. And we have been taught, every soul is an actor, they all have their destined part. So it's up to us to play our own part. And it's very good, I think, to consciously and conscientiously give others the freedom, the permission to be as stupid as they want to be, if they want to be stupid. But not to say that this is stupid, this is wrong, that is wrong, because then our attention goes away from ourselves, and we're not discerning the qualities of another person. So then it means we're lokic, same like anybody else. There's no difference. But what Baba has taught is discern the good qualities and relate to the person in that currency. And whatever is not what you think is good, live it. Because we know the philosophy of karma. If somebody is doing something negative, anyway, it's going to get taken care of sooner or later. You see? But it also doesn't mean that you allow, promote, encourage, or enable negative action. You see? Because that's another very, very subtle area. You see, sometimes people say, oh, I can't say anything because they might get upset. Have you done that? I can't say anything because they might get upset. That's not a very good reason. Whatever you have to say, say. But if you're having an emotion about it, you don't have the right to say it yet. You have to make yourself totally neutral. And then say what you have to say. Because otherwise, what comes across is your disturbance, your emotion. Maybe somebody's doing something you don't like, somebody's coming into the house with shoes on, you go, I can't say anything, they might get upset. No. You're upset. Forget about them getting upset, you're upset. Make yourself quiet and calm and say, excuse me, here, you'd leave your shoes. Big deal. Then they'll say, oh, why didn't you tell me before? And you wouldn't be able to have honesty enough to say, oh, I was too upset about it. And then you'll say, oh, I didn't want to upset you, which would not be the truth. You see. But we need to become more truthful. But it's a good policy, I have found, that there are things to be said, but you do not have the right to say anything until you are totally emotion-free. Because if you're not emotion-free, it means there's fear, there's anger, there's irritation, there's ego, mostly ego, and then you may be saying something true, but as Baba had said in another Murli, if you tell the truth with anger, it becomes the untruth. You see, and you can apply that formula to any of the vices or any of the negative emotions. And if you make it a policy for yourself that, no, I know something has to be said, but I'm too upset to say it in a neutral way, so I have to make myself okay and then say it. And there'll be good communication. They will immediately understand what you're talking about and go and work with it, you see. So, don't think that that is not a negative influence. It's a very negative influence. And these emotions that happen in you when you feel, oh, I don't want to upset somebody, they are instrument to make you upset about what they're doing, so that you can develop the ability to not be upset about what they're doing, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It really is none of your business, or it really doesn't matter. What matters is you remain neutral. And then you say what you have to say, you see. And you will find the harmony is maintained, and you are not under the effect of being afraid of what they might do about what you want to say but can't, because maybe, it's all very dysfunctional to do it that way. But the key is, let me say what I have to say when I'm totally neutral about this thing. And it may take you 20, 30 years to get neutral, doesn't matter, we have eternity, but make yourself neutral. It's really worthwhile. Sometimes there's big things, oh, you did this, in the previous generation, and so we have to fight over it. This is how we have continuing wars in Israel and Ireland. It's always like that. I have to avenge my 2-3 ancestors back because your ancestor did such and such a thing, you see, and so we are enemies. Not necessarily, Make yourself free. Make yourself neutral. And if somebody's really, like we have in Madhuban, have you seen in Panda Bhavan, there's a big notice next to the Krishna by the gate, and it says anyone who wants to create a disturbance, they have to go. Have you noticed that? Yeah. So we have a certain setup, agreed methods of conduct, you see. And so if somebody goes against something, neutrally, you have to say, hey, you want to do this? You have to do somewhere else. So it's a big, big subject. But the key, I think, is to give permission for everyone from your heart to play their part the way they want to play it. Then you're not caught up in getting into a karmic account with them. And then say what you have to say when you yourself are totally neutral and detached about the whole thing. It's a very, very good yukti. Okay, Om Shanti.